And even now, I feel choked up. It was so moving. You know, Denzel had this huge speech about dreams and what you can dream as a black man and can you or can you not? And of course, Barack sitting there, it's the biggest kind of dream that any black man could have. And there was just not a dry eye. I mean, including all of us on the stage. I mean, when Denzel gave that speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
So, what's it like being here, back in the theatre, after all this time?
It's quite strange coming in, I think, after this.
I felt that.
This gap.
Have you worked on this stage?
No.
No.
Never been asked.
But you've worked in the Olivier quite a lot.
I've worked in... I think I've only worked in the Olivier.
Yeah. I remember very well when I first met you at Swiss Cottage Library in 1984, right?
Wow.
And you, I remember...
I was 5.
You were 5. Primary school prepping for your first day. I remember that you wanted to be an actress then.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you wanted to be a director then.
No,
I think it came later, didn't it?
No, it wasn't in my head.
You didn't
at
know
all.
what you were doing?
No, I think I thought I was going to be in the media.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough confidence to believe that I could be in theatre. It didn't seem accessible to me at all, actually. Although I did go to theatre a bit, at school and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I think we talked about...
Yeah. You'd done school plays and stuff, hadn't you?
Done school plays and really wanted to be an actress from the age
you were
of...
very clear.
Yeah,
You
I think the
really
age of
knew.
7.
You knew exactly what you were going to do.
Basically, that's what I decided to do, and I couldn't really understand why I didn't have to do any schoolwork.
Yeah.
Because I was going to be an actress and go to drama school, and that's what I was going to do. And so my background wasn't that. My mum, at that time, was a hairdresser, single parent, and I grew up in Wembley. I didn't have any sort of family background in acting. Although I've just been looking for through some old photographs at my mum's house, and we found some photographs of my grandma and grandfather doing amateur dramatics.
Interesting. I never knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
It's really interesting.
So, yeah.
And
it's like that.
Just the 7-year-old thing, was that seeing someone on telly or?
I saw Annie,
did
the
you?
musical, on the Royal Variety Show.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's still going.
It is still going.
The Royal Variety Show.
Yeah.
And I was watching the Royal Variety Show with my mum, and they did a little bit from Annie on it, and there was one of the orphans was black, and I thought...
Right.
So I must have recognised...
That's
I can't
amazing.
remember when I first became aware of colour and all that, but I must have been aware because I remember thinking,
there's a place.
Yeah, there's a place.
That's such a powerful little story, isn't it? In terms of how important it is to see
That was the first
yourself.
time, I think.
Yeah.
How did you get into theatre?
Well, I mean, there was this sort of background in my family. I mean, they were all very dramatic.
I do remember
But
that.
my grandmother, interestingly, I've been doing quite a lot of genealogy stuff. My mum's mum went to RADA. There was a sort of there was a preschool RADA. I mean, the irony of this is that my mum wanted to be an actress and did a bit of acting. Yeah. So she was one of the original Centrinians.
That's
and when you freeze frame the Bells of St Trinities, you can see her there. And she was very serious about it, and she got a place at RADA, but my grandfather said that all actresses were whores, and they were not, and she wasn't to go. But all her life, it was a massive frustration. And she ended up working in the NHS. And she married my dad, who was in the film business and had come from a background where, rather like you, he'd come from a background where there was no one, but he sort of got into it through the National Service and then became a film editor. And I think my mum married my dad partly because he sort of represented that world. So it was absolutely there. And they were, my mum was a big sort of theatre goer, and both my mum and my stepmum and my dad, they were big sort of theatre goers and stuff. So I was taken to the theatre, and I was taken to theatre, I went to school a comprehensive school in London, and they used to give free tickets in those days.
So good.
Brilliant. And we had brilliant English teachers, and they took us to see a lot. So, but I can't remember going, oh, well, that's what I want to do. It wasn't until university that I got into it, And then you went to a college to do your A-level.
Yeah.
But that's when you got to the Royal Court, wasn't it?
Yeah, I dropped out. I started doing A-levels.
That's right.
And I had a teacher there, and I said to him what I wanted to do, and because he was saying, you know, you're very good in class, but you just don't do any homework at all. And I said, well, because I'm going to be an actress, and, you know, I'm going to do all this. And he said, well, what are you doing here then? Why don't you just go off and do it? I went, OK, then. And off I went.
You talked me into it.
I marched out and never went back again. And then I kind of worked and had jobs, like, you know, part-time jobs. Right. And I joined the Royal Court, who had a sort of youth theatre at the time. And I thought I was sort of already going there.
So, yeah, you did an amazing show, didn't you? A show about Sojourner Truth, right?
Well, it wasn't actually about her, but it was about... I made it about her.
That's what you told me.
She was one of the characters in it.
I thought she was the main character. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah. We did, yeah, that's what we did. And that was really... And then I got a small part in Serious Money, Carol Churchill.
Incredible cast.
It was an incredible
I mean,
cast.
imagine that's your first experience of working. And Carol Churchill.
And Carol Churchill, and Max Stafford Clark was directing, and they just put some of us from the youth theatre as, like, the small kind of two-line parts in it, so they could have a lot of people on stage. And I just used to just sit in at all the rehearsals, whenever I was allowed to sit in at rehearsals and just watch these, you know, these titans. You know. It was an incredible... I remember thinking, when my acting career started, this is really easy. You just go to a youth theatre, then they put you in a kind of massive hit show, and there's queues around the block. I thought that's what you get when you go to do a show. As you arrive, there's a queue around the block to get the return tickets. I just thought that was doing a show. And then while you're there, you get a scholarship for RADA. And I just thought, I've chosen a really good career. Everything I had, it was like a Midas touch.
You did have... I wouldn't describe
it
as easy, because it's never easy, but
no, it's not later on.
Doors opened quickly for you.
Yeah, I was really...
Yeah, they did.
I had my mindset, and it just all kind of happened.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you went to university.
Well, I went to university in Warwick, and it was a funny old place because it's a campus, and at the first year, I'd been sort of swanning around. I screwed up my A-level, so I had to redo them in the autumn.
Oh, I remember that.
In the January, right? So
messing around with me too much, that was why.
Well, probably, it's all your fault. Anyway, in those days, nowadays you need to get like 4 A stars to even get in anywhere. In those days you didn't, but I didn't get the grades I needed, so I needed to sort of up them. And I redid them in the January, and that meant I had from January to like October, and I ended up getting a job in a film in the West End. So I was like in Soho, thought I was as cool as anything. We would go out clubbing all the time. I was really into art, and I used to go to galleries. I mean, it was a pretty brilliant year. And then I found myself in this sort of campus university, and it was pretty depressing. And I just was thinking about leaving the whole time. That first year, I wanted to leave. And I think it's also partly... I've noticed this with my friends' kids now.
It's very familiar, that, isn't it? They always want to leave in the first year.
Yeah, especially, I think, if you've grown up in a city like London. I wouldn't say it's just London. It's probably the same in Manchester or, you know, Cardiff or whatever. If you've grown up in a city, you sort of... You accelerate. You're older than people who haven't, because you've been exposed... And actually, I was very snobby. I just thought most of the people there were like kids. I was just stuck up. But in the end, I got into it, and there was a lot of sort of drama going on campus, and so I did a bit of acting. You don't? No.
Seen you in the show. Just saying. Was it Sus?
I was a racist policeman.
I remember it very well.
It wasn't really for me, but then I did a bit of directing, and I sort of really enjoyed it, and sort of thought, I don't even think when I was at university I thought I could do it, but I got into it, and it was stuff like, you know, your connection with the Royal Courts, going and finding the sort of places that were doing the work that I was interested in. And we were down the road from Stratford as well. And I went to see a lot of really good shows in Stratford. There was some great stuff going on in those days, and it felt really buzzy.
You could, at that time, just do things, create things, and make a company.
Yeah,
and there was funding to do that.
Yeah.
There was access to things, wasn't there?
There was, yeah. I remember your audition speech for RADA, which was from a show we'd been to see at the Royal Court called The Coloured Museum.
George C. Wolfe.
Yeah. And it was a brilliant speech about a girl giving birth to an egg. And she was a girl, wasn't she? She was like a child.
A little girl, yeah. I saw it on the Royal Court, and I just thought, oh, I'll copy that.
Great choice, though.
Yeah, and I did, can't even think, King Lear, that was it.
Right.
And I watched it, and I basically just copied the way the actor...
Well, you know.
I just found 8 lines that ran together and just kept playing it over and over again, and then just copying the inflections, and then just sort of went in. Did my modern, that was all fine. Then did the Shakespeare, and then I can't remember the person that was auditioning was like, "Can we just try it another way?" And I was thinking, "Another way?" And there was.
Who do you want me to do this time?
There was no other way. You know, but anyway, so it wasn't a perfect audition.
No, but it
somehow
worked.
it worked, yeah.
Did you were you confident when you did the audition? Did you feel that it had gone well?
I don't know. I tried for a couple of other dramas and got in.
Yeah, I
so
remember that.
remember thinking,
that.
I tried for 3 and got in for 3 at that time.
Right,
so I
amazing.
remember thinking, by the time I got to RADA, I think I'd already got a place somewhere else. I was feeling slightly more confident, but it was very rigorous. I had to, I think, go 3 times, and it was very, very nerve-wracking. And we weren't quite sure what they were looking for, but I sort of understood about taking direction quite early.
Okay.
And so I realised that it wasn't so much about having the perfect speech or doing it the perfect way, but understanding that you could perhaps listen and change and adapt to what someone was asking you to do.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to think about what I learned there. I think after a while you sort of undo some of the stuff. What it gave to me is I made some really good friends, a couple of whom are still my friends today. And I think the other thing that it did for me is it got me to read a lot of stuff quite fast. And I didn't have a university background. It sort of got me to, I didn't know who Chekhov was when I didn't know who Stanislavski was. I didn't know all these things when I went to RADA. And so in a very short space of time, I suddenly knew by the end of the first year who all these people were, and I'd read quite a lot. But some of the voice stuff was just so important. I didn't really realise how important while I was there. It felt a bit of a chore. And then years later, I was like, oh, right, I understand.
I mean, obviously, it's not, people think it's about being heard, but for me, it's about connecting with inside fully. Because you're expressing, if you're in a theatre this big, the person up at the back there you need to communicate as clearly with them as you are with that person there. And I think you do if you're connected.
Yes, you
do. If it's authentic.
Yeah.
And that's
but
hard to do.
It's hard to get that. That you can drive it which way you want, you know, that you can have that... That's not control, because there's a freedom as well. So control is almost the wrong word, but being able to use your voice in such a way that you can do a lot and tell a lot of different things with it. You can say a lot of different things with the voices. And I use that on film, television, theatre. It's not just the theatre that you're using that for. I'm constantly thinking about, or not even maybe sometimes consciously, but my voice is incredibly important. So
that's really interesting. Do you think that, because there is this tradition in this country, and I think probably in the States, but certainly in this country, that actor training is based around the theatre. Do you think that's a good idea?
I can't imagine a life without doing theatre, because I'd feel that you were just missing a massive part of being an actor if you at least didn't try or experiment with the theatre. There's something about the energy that happens between the playwright, yourself as the actor, the other actors on stage, and the audience. And this kind of energy is going through all those voices, and you can feel it. And there's a kind of magic that happens that, even though it's really scary, I know it's really scary, and every time I do a play, I think, why am I doing this? Because it's so scary. I just couldn't... I don't think I'd be an actor unless I did theatre as well. And all that I've learned in the theatre, and also with all the directors I've worked with and the other actors, that has fed into my film and television life, which I have a big life of as well. But I'm not sure, I didn't always get the same opportunities in film and television as I have done in theatre. There weren't the restrictions on the way I looked on my colour that there were on television and film at that time when I was young and I started out. I could do the parts. I could play a duchess on the theatre, and nobody, well, because of the directors of our generation that were casting me like that. Maybe it wasn't like that the generation before, but I was getting parts which I wasn't getting on television and film only recently.
Right.
That sort of changed.
Did that make you? I mean, because that is incredibly unfair and frustrating when you know you're good enough and you're right in every way to play certain roles, but you're sort of thwarted because of your ethnicity. Was that?
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, I couldn't let it get me down in that sense that I think I was sort of tried to be in the school of excellence, and I just had to be better, done more work, more research, more everything than anybody else in the room, so that I could feel like I could just earn my place and more everywhere I went, which is not maybe that's not, I don't know if I would have dealt with it that way now, but that's what I did then. I mean, it's really difficult to tell when you're living in a world where there are so many restrictions on you because of your colour. It's really difficult to tell how it might be other than that, because that was the world I was living in at that time. And on retrospect, I can think maybe I should have done this differently or that differently, but that was the world I was in, so I just fought and got my way through in the best way I felt I could at that time. And that was by just constantly finding that place for myself, you know, and I found that mostly in the theatre, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So tell me about what I find interesting is there's a lot written about actors, about how they get into, how they become an actor. You know, you can read about it anywhere, but I think it's quite, and I particularly have a niece who's getting into directing, and she's asked about how she gets into directing, and I think I actually don't know what to say to her, because it seems really impossible.
To be honest, I started a company when I left college. I had a job initially. I got a job as a runner on a TV programme, but I hated it. Anyway, I decided to start a theatre company because I thought there was a sensible bit of me that when I'm only 22, I've got nothing to lose. Why don't I do the thing that I really want to do? And if it doesn't work, I can do something else. And actually, I'm really glad I had that sensible bit of my brain, because I really believe that the worst thing in life is having regrets. And those come from not doing something. They very rarely come from doing something.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So I did know that. But I honestly did not... I had super confidence on one level and no confidence on the other, because I never imagined anyone would pay me. What? How? Why would I be paid? On what basis? So I didn't even write to people to ask for a job. I didn't even know that there were sort of things like trainee, sort of assistant directing things. Anyway, I started a company and I did that for 2 years, and I sort of got good at raising money, but I didn't really know the first thing about directing. I mean, I was just winging it. And then eventually, the roads coalesced and I ended up at the RSC
we were back
as an
together.
assistant when you were there.
You know,
So we sort of came back together.
came back together. I was
And actually, that was a great time for me.
spear carrying, and you were sort of...
I was an assistant director.
Yeah, which is the...
Yeah, I was an assistant director, but I learned so much. And because I've been running a company and paying people and doing VAT returns and all that sort of stuff, it's such a responsibility to be paid, to be in Stratford-on-Avon and go to Peter Hall's rehearsals every day and watch these incredible actors. There was a lot of moaning going on, I seem to remember, in that year. I was just, I can't believe it. I was
It was amazing.
euphoric. And I did learn a huge amount that year.
And you were given quite a lot of responsibility, I remember.
I ended up
in the
having a
end,
lot
in
of
the end,
responsibility, yeah. Because I stayed. You left. You went off. You were too zhuzhy to stay. I stayed and went to London and did 2 years, basically.
Yeah.
Did 2 years. But the first year, when I got the job, I literally remember jumping up and down around. I was staying at my dad's. I was working as a security guard at night. It was the worst job ever. Basically, what happened was a company that made loads of their staff redundant, and they threatened to come back and burn the place down, and I was the security guard, me.
Definitely secure in your hands.
Really intimidating, should they come around with torches. Anyway. So it was I had to give up my flat. I was staying with my dad. It was like not a good time in my life. And then I got an interview for the RSC, and I worked my arse off for the interview. I tell you, I was so prepared. I got 2 interviews, I got the job. And the day I got the job, I literally was jumping around the room, because it was the first time anyone in the sort of official theatre or anything official had gone, "We're choosing you." I couldn't believe it, because everything I'd done before that, I'd sort of generated myself. And for directors starting now, there is no path. Every director you speak to has a different journey. Sometimes they get opportunities very young, sometimes they have to wait. But I think what you said is such a great sort of thing to do, which is just be excellent, try and get better at what you do. I think that's when I look back at my time, I think the opportunities I didn't have back then, which were very frustrating to me, sort of after that period when I left the RSC, I was so frustrated I had to go be painting and decorating, doing all sorts of other things. I couldn't make a living. It was really hard. But when I think about it, I read and I thought, and I got better.
Yeah.
I did do bits and pieces, but I got better.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because you can always improve.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a really particularly fulfilling, exciting acting experience on stage.
One was Antony and Cleopatra on the Olivier. That was just an extraordinary... I know that people... I haven't seen that film where all those great actresses talk about playing Cleopatra, but I've heard that they all say it's the greatest role, and they're absolutely right. It is the greatest role. She was never one thing. There was no sort of good, bad sides. She was just lots of things all the time. And that made me feel I felt very free. I felt there were so many places you could go, so many different ways you could go, and I just felt absolutely bereft when I finished. It took me quite a few months to get over it.
What was your prep like for that before you started
A
rehearsal?
year of prep.
And what kind of things were you doing?
I always feel like I don't know enough. I always think I don't know as much as everybody. I don't know enough. It's the thing that goes on in my head all the time. And because I'm not naturally sort of an intellectual person at all. I'm not really well read. I'm not. I still find grammar difficult to understand, which has an advantage as well as a disadvantage. Is that I really think deeply about every word, every sentence. And with Shakespeare, you can just. It's just an incredible ocean of stuff that you just pick apart three words or one sentence, and there's just so much in it, and you can be reading around that sentence for a long, long time. So I allowed myself the luxury of just making sure I understood.
Did you feel ready when you started rehearsals, having done all that work? Did you feel sort of...
Oh, no, my mantra is, like, I haven't done enough. I'm not ready. I haven't done enough. I'm not ready. That's like... And my husband's like, oh, God. You know, that's my constant thing. But I was exactly the point I needed to be. I mean, I already knew it all. And,
yes.
But I wasn't trying to learn it, just from going through it so many times. And I had... You know, I'd done a lot of work, and then I feel slightly embarrassed when I get in there. I think, God, I've done so much work, but keep it quiet. I've done so much work.
You don't be thinking you're keen or anything.
Yeah. But my main thing is, once I get there, I literally just throw it all away. I barely look at anything notes I've made ever again. It's only done before I start rehearsal, and then I just leave it at home. And somehow, what sticks, what doesn't. And then I start afresh with the director and the cast, and just really live. Because I love rehearsal so much, and it's all about playing. And I think if I hadn't done that work beforehand, I wouldn't be able to play. And that's my favourite thing to do, is to really have quite a lot of fun and play. I don't take it very seriously, but that's my favourite thing to do.
Did you think you grew... Did you feel like you grew in the part through the run? Because you did quite a lot of performances,
Yeah, I did,
you?
and I don't know how I come across. You know, I don't know...
Yeah, but in your own sense of what you were doing.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. There was some good stuff in the early stuff because it's quite raw. Then you become a bit knowing, and then you come raw again. And, you know, it all depends. It depends on what time of the month it was for me, what kind of performance I would give. And there was all those things, like hormones. I mean, everything just kind of shapes, because I always just use everything that's inside me. I don't really separate. And so it's kind of... It just all depended on what mood I was in. And Rafe was so open to anything could happen. So it was all different all the time, really.
What happens, you don't need to... I mean, that was a great partnership on stage that you had for that reason. What happens if you're working with someone and you're sort of in that place, but you're not getting that openness back? How do you deal with it?
Well, I think there's always nights with everybody, and I'm sure they get it from me, where they think, God, if only she wouldn't do that irritating thing, or she wouldn't do that, you know. But I think the key is that everything can serve something. Anything that happens, whatever they're doing. I once worked with an actor that used to fall asleep quite a lot. In the middle of my speech. And, you know, and so you had to find a way of kind of just... It's an energy of some sort. And you're going to have to just not preempt that's going to happen, and use that, even that kind of, the anxiety about it, with some sort of energy, you know, so...
And that's such a great way of thinking, because then you're sort of building and growing in the work, and not sort of... Because I've experienced a sort of that awful vicious circle of, well, if they're not going to do that, I can't do that. And then the blame game starts, and you're just... you're on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah, it's not going to be a creative experience.
It will not help you.
Yeah. Tell me about what's your favourite...
I would say probably the last thing I did on stage was Follies, and I think the thing I loved most about doing that show was that you actually really share it with your choreographer. If you're doing a musical, you share it with the choreographer and the musical director.
Yeah.
The three of you are leading the process together. I mean, obviously, the directors have got the overview, but it was such a relief not to sort of have to be in charge the whole time and not for it to sort of always come back to you, that you were sort of responding to other work. And I had brilliant collaborators. So for me, that was really brilliant. And I think because I have a much greater appreciation for... It's rather like what you're saying about being an actor and wanting to do theatre. For me, the sort of basic, elemental, universal sort of thing about theatre, that it's always been there, it will always be there. Whatever the technology that happens, human beings will always tell stories just together in a room like that. It's always going to happen. And there's something about the purity of that when you're working with lots of cameras and everything, which I also love, by the way, absolutely love, it's so much more sort of a broken down technical experience. And I feel I've got more appreciation for those sort of universal qualities of theatre, storytelling, live performance. Also, there's a negative element, which is I'm always sort of, grass is always greener. So when I'm unhappy about the film thing I'm doing, I can go, well, I'm going back to theatre, so I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm actually a theatre person, I'm just...
Anyway, yes.
And when I get frustrated with theatre, it's like, well, I'm just going off to do it. You know, so, yeah. So what are the things that you most like about the best qualities in a director and the worst qualities in a director?
My favourite thing is that they're really, really prepared. I mean, that they've done the work and at the same time...
I'm feeling insecure already.
Incredibly, at the same time, really, really open. And I think probably my least favourite things are the opposite of that, where they've really decided what they want to do beforehand, and they might as well just have anybody coming in to do the part because they've decided so much what they want to do that they don't want to get anything from you. It's like a two-way thing, and I always feel like it should be a two-way thing, and it's so great when that happens that there's so many possibilities for everything that you're doing, and if you get the right cast with the right director, those possibilities live all the time in the rehearsal room, and they live and expand. But if it's very set, before you've even started, it's just a bit boring, really. I can't be bothered doing work like that anymore. I just can't. I'm quite choosy about the theatre I do now. The last time I've done one show, I'll say in the last 20 years, just to keep it very loose, with a director that I just thought, I remember thinking, this is the last time I do a show like this, where I felt very much that that particular director wasn't that very interested in actors or really just in their own particular vision, and that was that, and you just had to sort of stand in the right place to hit their light, and I just thought, it's fine, and maybe I'd quite enjoyed a lot of that particular director's shows to watch, but I actually don't want to be in them because there's so many people that I enjoy working with that's a very creative two-way experience, and I'd rather just do that. That's my personal thing. So. Now, what's your favourite thing about actors?
I mean, I think it's going to be quite similar, my answer, because I think the thing that I like most about an actor is a sort of openness. I mean, most actors will bring something into the room at the beginning of rehearsal, which is a whole load of thoughts about the character, they'll have done their work. But what I want is to create it in the room with them, as you've described. I will have ideas, but I will always be more interested in that moment. Because I think if you're not creating something alive, if it's not alive in the rehearsal room and then alive on stage, it's not theatre as far as I'm concerned. Do you know what I mean? So what you're describing about rigid ideas, either from a director or an actor, there's no life in it. And you need that sort of sense of something being in the moment and being alive. So for me, I love actors who will create and respond in the moment. So that's my favourite. My least favourite, I think, is probably sort of the various techniques that some actors will use to not take responsibility and not go to where the part asks them to go to.
What techniques would those be?
Well, OK, so most plays are about emergencies, aren't they? They're about extreme situations, right? And if an actor is having to go into that emergency, there'll be a part of them that has to go there.
Yeah.
Now, we can talk endlessly about how much of acting is sort of pretending and how much is being, but at some point in the process, they have to sort of be, even if it's just for a rehearsal, and even if they imagine, they still have to sort of go there. So I think what can happen is that actors can unconsciously block that from happening. And it can come out in a million ways. It can come out with lots of chat.
Anecdotes.
It can come out in belligerence or it can come out in sort of the rejection of an idea. And my point is, I sort of don't feel like I'm not going to hold anyone to anything, but I always want to sort of try. If there's something that feels like it should be tried, I think it should be tried, you know?
Have we done the highlight of your career? No.
No. I tell you what, I think my high points are working with brilliant people, and they're the moments that I mean, sometimes, you know, you're working, thinking about working with someone like Imelda Staunton.
Yeah.
You know that. We're working with a brilliant actor, brilliant director. It's just thrilling because, and in fact, sometimes when you work with really good people, as a director, you sort of go, oh, what am I actually here for? I don't know what I'm here for because everything you do is good. Do you know what I mean? Everything you're offered is good, and it's a sort of editorial process of clarity or something. But yeah, so I think probably it's those moments. But I honestly believe that I mean, I think I'm a slow burn person. So I sort of feel like I'm getting better, and I sort of feel maybe my best work is yet to come.
Yeah, I actually agree. I really agree with even with myself. Can't think it's not really like that.
I can tell you what my low points were.
Okay.
I took a job once, and I was a replacement director. I was much, much younger. It was a good
I remember.
decades past. And I wasn't, you know, established. I wasn't really earning a living. And the play had lots of components that were really good, but it wasn't really finished. And I also inherited sort of half a cast from the previous director. The director couldn't get a work permit to work in this country, so I had to take over. And it sort of never came together, and there were lots of fault lines in the cast, and it was horrible. Because I didn't feel inside it, I didn't feel like I owned it, I didn't feel sort of qualified. And every day I would go in feeling sort of more and more diminished by the experience. But I have to say, of course, the thing is that when you do the painful things, that's where you really, really learn. And after that, I decided that I would never do a show where I didn't have a team, a proper team. Like casting is not about a bunch of good people. It's about how is this going to work as a unit? Is this going to hold together as a unit? Because theatre, you need that. OK, so what are your high points?
Again, the high points are just coming and coming. I do think the first time I worked on Broadway was a great high point because I was in my 40s and I thought, I just remember going to the rehearsals and just walking up, you know, through Manhattan to rehearsals and just thinking, oh my God, I have made it. But I had the same thought when I first came to the National and I cycled over Waterloo Bridge, and I remember thinking, I'm cycling to... I've made it. So I've had these kind of... And they both those times where I've made it times have been coming to start a first day of rehearsal on a theatre job. That's happened both times. So it's been Troilus and Cressida when I cycled over and then walking up Broadway to go to rehearsals. And that was a super, super experience.
Raisin in the Sun.
Doing
right?
a Raisin in the Sun.
Yeah.
In part because a really amazing cast. We had a huge film star in Denzel Washington, and he was just a magnificent theatre actor. I mean, he's just...
And so generous. I mean,
Yes.
I came to see you in that. Was it a preview? I think it was a
Well,
preview.
I rang you up because I was very worried. You know, as I always do, I worry a lot.
You have to. It's part of the
I do.
it's
It's part of my thing, of process. And there's always a point where I arrive and think, I can play this part, this is going good. And in the middle of rehearsal, I go, I cannot do it. And then I get my confidence up again. And then we go into previews and I dive, like you said. And I rang you up and said, you need to come to New York and watch a preview. This is a disaster. I don't know what I'm doing. You just need to give me some notes. But living in a city where you don't live normally and being away from home for that long and doing 8 shows a week, you don't really get a chance to kind of... Well, I don't, because I just can't... I'm not one of those people that can sort of go shopping at Macy's and then go and do a show in the evening. I literally wake up in the morning, I'm like, show. And it's on my mind all day long and I can't really think about anything else. And on my days off, I usually just try not to speak so that I can save my voice.
So have you got a pinch me moment then in your working life, theatre working life?
When I was doing A Raisin in the Sun, and I've told this story before, but it was a really fantastic moment, is Barack Obama and Michelle came to see A Raisin in the Sun, and we were told, I think about 3 days before, someone very important was coming, and there were rumours going around who it was, and the theatre just sold the tickets where they normally... So anyone who had tickets sort of in front of... They just had... They were bought months before, so they didn't know. It was kept very quiet. And then we had to come into the theatre a few hours early because it was all sealed off. All the roads around were sealed off, and we had, like, a sniper on the roof and armed guard outside on every corridor of the dressing rooms, and we all had to be searched. There was a kind of, you know, whole thing going on. There's already a buzz because everyone can feel, because there's helicopters everywhere circling the theatre. All the roads, so there's already rumours that you know, that they're here. And the lights go down, and then it erupts. Like, I can just see through the curtain, just everybody's got their cameras out, and it's just flashing, flashing, flashing. It just goes on for 10 minutes. I mean, just, and then they're announcing that, you know, please put your camera, we need to start the show, but everybody's just gone completely insane, screaming. And anyway, eventually it dies down, they bring the curtain up. And even now I feel choked up. It was so moving because Raisin in the Sun is about, I mean, it's about poverty. I mean, it's about race. It's about, are you able to dream as a black man in that particular, or black person? Can you dream, or all your hopes and dreams, or do they end up, you know, shriveled up like a raisin in the sun? And so, you know, Denzel had this huge speech about dreams and what you can dream as a black man, and can you or can you not? And of course, Barack sitting there, who's, you know, it's the biggest kind of dream that any black man could have. And there was just not a dry eye. I mean, including all of us on the stage. I mean, when Denzel gave that speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And it was just so moving. And I thought, it really doesn't get any better. And they actually came round in the interval, which is very unusual. Normally, people come backstage at the end, and they came round in the interval. And I just lost it, you know. When I came backstage, I just completely, I think I just leveled it off the ground when I saw Michelle. It was just so exciting, and they were just so charismatic. I mean, just the two of them came into the room, and it's bang, that energy. They've got that incredible presence. And anyway, so to have them there in the audience when we're doing that particular play, and Denzel saying that particular speech, I think probably was my sort of pinch me moment of my career.
That's a brilliant story. I can't get anywhere near that.
Oh.
I wish I could. But so actually, the one that comes to mind is something that you were there in the room with, and it was actually not theatre. It was when we were doing the Hollow Crown, and we had 6 weeks rehearsal, which was very necessary because of doing Shakespeare. You can't just turn up on set. And for me, Judi Dench, I mean, she's a sort of, you know, she is a sort of standard bearer for everything that is great about what we do.
In everything.
In every way, because she is a magnificent actor.
And person.
She's a wonderful person. And I've always watched her and thought, that is what it's all about. And also the other great thing about her is she just seems to sort of get better and better. She sort of grows. And we offered her the part and she agreed to do it. Did I meet her before that? I don't think I did. She came into rehearsal.
I know it was before, I can tell you, because I was there.
Yeah.
Before rehearsals, you and me were waiting.
Oh, were we?
For her to come in.
I don't remember that.
And you were like, Judi Dench. Judi Dench is about to come in for rehearsals.
So
and we're thinking, last time, we've come from Swiss Cottage Library, you and me,
exactly.
so that's the weirdest thing.
So it was you, me, Benedict Cumberbatch, who also I knew and had worked with before, and a couple of other people, lovely group of people, sitting around the table. We were just working through the language. And, she'd prepared and was word perfect. And when she left the room, I don't know if you remember this, I just sort of screamed and said, I have just directed Judi Dench.
Was it? I remember.
And it was partly because you were there, actually.
To witness it.
It was because, again, it's that thing, because you recognise, because we knew each other from when we were teenagers, the thing of, like, how far have I come that I'm actually directing someone that great?
Yeah. In Shakespeare.
In Shakespeare, who knows more about Shakespeare than, you know, all of us put together. So, yeah, that was an incredible moment. And those are the moments. There was another moment working with Saoirse Ronan and Ian McEwan on Chesil Beach, and it is sort of it's not when you're in the heat of it, because I don't think you can see it when you're in the heat of doing something. There's so much pressure. But you sort of go, I'm working with these people. They are the best in the world.
I feel that this theatre, the National, for me, is just one of the highlights. One of the things I'm really proud of in this country. I just think the National Theatre is fantastic. When I've got people from abroad and they come here on normal time, they say, "What?" I say, "Well, just go and see something. Just go to the National. You'll find something. You know, there'll be 3 shows, whatever. You will find something in there. It'll be of a good quality." You know, to go and...
I agree. I mean,
you can take a punt.
In terms of working as a director in theatre, this is the best place in the country
incredibly
to work,
supported.
as far as I know, because I haven't worked everywhere, but it's, you know, the places I've worked, because you have a sort of level of care amongst the staff that is unlike anywhere else. I mean, everyone cares, but there's just a sort of incredible dedication and talent amongst
and every
all
department.
the people here, all the departments. And it's the crafts, people making things backstage. It's the stage crews and how much they want to get the show right. You know, the amount of times you
Stage door when you come in.
There's a sort of level of connection to what happens on the stage that is sort of magical. And I agree, it's such a brilliant place to work, and you know, and it's a place that offers up so much great work. I've seen. Oh, well, actually, my first thought when I came in here was the shows that I've seen in this theatre.
I know.
You know. The brilliant shows I've seen as a member of the audience over the years, you know.
It's one of the first places I come up to London. I don't live in London anymore. I come up, you know, a couple of times a month to see something here. I just come and see whatever's on, usually a matinee. And it's one of my favourite things, my favourite ever thing to do. And I can't wait till it comes back, because without it, to have this national theatre feels so important, doesn't it? It feels such a part of our British culture.
It's about, well, the conversation's always about who we are, and you can feel you're in a group of people experiencing something about how you are living right now. You know, as much as I love TV and film, and I've had a great time the last year catching up on all the holes in my film going and watching wonderful series and stuff. It's, in the end, it's just you and your family or whatever sitting down watching the telly. It's not the same as being in a group where you're sort of sharing something. And here, because it's the national, it's sort of got that significance.
Maybe I'm just going to see everything now. I'm just going to see.
Well,
I just
can't wait
for a year,
Yeah.
absolutely
I can't
every
wait
single
for
thing
it
that comes on.
to come back and to go see stuff, as you say. To go. I did come and see one of the shows in the Olivier in the brief moment where we were allowed to sort of go back into performances, and it was so brilliant to be here and to see it coming to life again. So I can't wait for it.
And I should look forward to seeing your show back here.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I realised, because I was worried before we did this, that because we know each other so well, that we'd actually just have to go over things we already knew. But then I realised that we don't talk about work, what we do that much.
No, we talk about our life stuff much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was great, thank you.
Yeah, it was.
I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it too. Thank you, Dom.
Thank you.